Hi guys, this is Connor.
And this is Adam.
And today we're bringing you our interview series part 3.
That's right. In part 3, we are going to be talking about something that, well, it's not always easy for people to talk about in an interview.
That's right. Yeah, one of them is basically, why should we hire you?
Right.
So you have to talk about your strengths, obviously, but then you also have to talk about your weaknesses.
Okay, so besides these strengths, weaknesses, we're also going to be talking about work experience and your skills, which hopefully are a little bit easier to describe to a person in an interview, but we're really going to be focusing on these somewhat harder questions of how do you sell yourself?
Right, so let's take a listen to see how Josh sells himself.
All right.
Josh, why do you think you'd be a good fit for this position?
Well, I think I have highly relevant work experience and expertise in similar verticals. On top of that, I believe my passion and values are well aligned with what you're doing here as a company.
We're certainly looking for people who share our values. Now, what would you say your strengths are?
I believe my analytical skills and market sense are great assets as a product manager. I'm good at framing problems and leading the whole team to deliver.
What about your weaknesses? What are some areas you still need to work on?
One area that I'm working on is being more empathetic. I'm naturally pretty straightforward and to the point, but I've learned that in order to bring out the best in people, you need to be more sensitive and see things from their point of view.
I think that's something everybody can improve on. Can you also give me an example of where your team ran into conflict? How did you handle it?
For sure. When my last company decided to make a major product pivot, there was a lot of internal disagreement. I led the charge to assess different scenarios, use data as evidence, and ran a limited trial before we made the change.
That does sound like a smart way to go about it.
Thank you. This disciplined approach helped us to come to a solution that everyone was on board with.
Okay, so we just heard that dialogue between Catherine and Josh, and right away, Catherine comes out with that big question. Why do you think you'd be a good fit for this position?
And you're always going to hear this question or this phrasing, right?
Yeah.
A good fit for the position, for the company, for the team.
Yeah, a good fit. And it just means suitable.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like, Connor wears shirts that fit, I wear pants that fit, or a pretty good fit for this job.
And if they're not, you could say, well, you're not fit to be in this position.
That's right. Now, of course, if I tried to say that to Connor, he would probably come back to me and say, well, actually, I have a lot of expertise here.
Yeah, expertise. So just watch the pronunciation of this word. Looks like expertise.
Expertise.
Yeah, but no, expertise.
Expertise. And it just means a lot of knowledge.
It means like you are an expert.
You're an expert in this particular field or area.
Right. So you could have expertise in a lot of fields or companies or verticals.
Or verticals, right. Yeah, well, some of us might have that expertise. Vertical is something that we had to look up, didn't we? We did have to look it up.
Yeah, it's a very business English word.
Right. Now, vertical, of course, means up and down, as opposed to horizontal which means side to side. So when I saw the word for the first time, I thought, okay, it has to mean something about up and down.
Up and down, yeah. So in that same sense, it basically means you are targeting a specific market. You're not going horizontally to many different industries.
Right, yeah. If you think about those lines, like a horizontal line, as a company, you want to sell to as many people or in as many markets as possible. Whereas in a vertical situation, you just want to focus on one specific thing.
Yeah, and you're going to get really good at that thing.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So your verticals and your expertise, that's really important. But I think maybe more than that, your passion and your values should be well aligned with that company.
With the new company, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, hopefully with the old company as well, but we don't know the reason always why a person leaves a company. Align, we talk about align quite a bit on here.
Yeah. It's kind of similar if you imagine a line.
A line, right?
Yeah. It's in the same line. It's in the same direction.
Right, yeah. Again, it's a fit. These people, these values, these passions, they all fit. fit with the company. They're all aligned with the company.
Yeah.
Basically, they all match up with the company.
Exactly, they match up. And we always use the preposition with.
Yes, aligned with something. And of course, this is music to Catherine's ears.
Yeah.
She says, well, we're certainly looking for people who share our values. But now comes the difficult question.
Yes, what are your strengths?
Right, and Josh has a pretty good answer here. I'm not the best at answering this question, but I think that his answer is pretty decent here. He believes his analytical skills and market sense are great assets as a product manager.
Wow, I think he's practiced this one before.
He might have practiced it in the mirror once or twice,
Yeah,
right?
Right, analytical skills. So analysis, the noun form. When you're kind of looking for patterns, studying something.
Right. Well, a lot of people tend to be very analytical, and in this sense, it's very similar to logical.
Logical, yeah, exactly.
Now, also, some languages tend to be more analytical than others. For example, English is not really all that analytical in the sense of you're not really able to just look at a word and very easily determine its meaning.
Right, you need lots of things like context and all sorts of other things.
Exactly. Whereas a language, for example, Chinese.
Oh.
That is a typical example of an analytical language. If you can read, hopefully, you can look at combinations of characters you've never seen before, and chances are, if you have a good grasp, you can just deduce the meaning of the word.
Yes, for sure. So his analytical skills, that's one part, but another part is your market sense.
A market sense. I do not have a market sense. I do not have a fashion sense. What do I have a sense of?
Sense of humor.
I guess I have a sense of humor, yeah. So, it's funny how we would say market sense, fashion sense, but sense of humor. We don't say humor sense.
Right, yeah. This one, you just got to go case by case. I think.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have a good sense for the context.
Just your natural judgment of things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, these things, this market sense and these analytical skills, these are great assets.
Assets. Okay, so let's be careful of the pronunciation here.
Yeah, you don't want to say assets.
Yeah.
It's assets.
You don't want to say assets. Yeah, they're kind of both stressed. Assets.
Assets, right. Now, assets, of course, are things that are very valuable.
Yeah, it could be anything. It could be a quality of your personality, but it also could be like a house, even.
Right.
Yeah, it could be your property.
Yeah, it's anything that you own, right? Anything that you own that is valuable. Every year when you pay taxes, you have to make a list of your assets. Yeah, the government will always want to come and take their own chunk. I don't know if they can really tax your analytical skills or market sense. Don't know if they're quite there yet. But you never know. The government is always good at framing problems like, we don't have enough money.
Yeah, they are. Oh, framing. Yeah, so that's the next word that Josh uses here. Now, frame is kind of like a structure.
It's a structure. Well, if you look at a photograph, a lot of times the photograph or the piece of art will be framed in that they have that wood around it, giving it a structure.
Yeah, if you put a frame on a painting, sometimes the frame is more expensive than the actual painting.
Sure. It could be made from really expensive wood, or it could have really, beautiful carvings in it. But in this sense, basically, when you frame something, you're just kind of telling it in a way that is more useful, helpful, interesting, what have you.
The way you say it, essentially.
Sure. So, we often frame our stories in terms of the good guy and the bad guy.
Right. But in this case, he's framing problems in a way that leads the whole team to deliver.
Okay.
Pizza?
Pizza, maybe. If the product that he is managing is like a pizza delivery app, then maybe.
That would be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
It would be nice.
No, in this case, they're trying to deliver results.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of idiomatic in a sense, because you're not delivering something like hand delivering it.
You're not giving anything.
You're not giving anything, but results at the same time are still very important.
Yeah, for sure. You got to produce those results.
And we also do use deliver with the word promises. But here we don't tend to say you deliver promises. You deliver on a promise.
That's right. Yeah. All right. So Josh gave some really awesome strengths here, but now it's time for the tricky part. the weaknesses?
Well, I don't know. I think it's easier for me to talk about weaknesses than strengths, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you want to frame it in a way that the boss, the interviewer, can't say, well, that's okay.
Yeah, so in this case, his quote-unquote weakness is that he's not very empathetic.
Right, so empathetic means that you really understand someone's feelings kind of deeply, right?
Deeply, yeah. You put yourself in their position or in their shoes. But at the same time, when we think about these like great Silicon Valley leaders, they're probably not the most empathetic people. So again, what Connor said before about how he's framing this weakness, he's actually saying, I'm very straightforward and to the point, which is not necessarily a weakness.
Yeah, that could be a strength. You're efficient, right?
You're very, very efficient. But of course, if you're working on a team, you know, there are humans on that team. Humans are very complicated, and really a leader should strive to be a bit more empathetic if possible.
Yeah, don't be too straightforward or blunt.
Right, exactly. Now, I did mention to the point here, which I like because it basically means the same as straightforward. As someone who doesn't beat around the bush.
Right, yeah, exactly. Beat around the bush, that's a great expression. He doesn't pull any punches, right?
That's right. But, you know, he realizes, or at least he realizes that maybe the interviewer wants to hear him say things like, you need to be more sensitive and see things from their point of view.
Yeah, and this was a good choice because the interviewer, Catherine, says, well, that's something that everybody can improve on.
Right, right. Now, then she asks for an example of when his team ran into conflict. So again, speaking about humans, humans are emotional. They run into conflict all the time.
Right, it's not just about how well you work, but how well you work with other people, this interpersonal thing, right?
Right, exactly. And of course, conflict could be, well, it could exist on a very small scale. It could be, you know, at work, Jim and Joe are, you know, they hate each other. Or it could be states, governments, countries.
Yeah, for sure, like diplomatic conflict.
Right, exactly. And if there is a lot of diplomatic conflict and they can't resolve it, there might be a war. There might be an armed conflict.
Well, let's hope that doesn't come to that.
I hope not. One thing we should say about this word is, as a noun, as we're using it today, of course, the pronunciation is conflict.
Conflict.
But if it is a verb, which it could also be, Jim conflicted with John.
Yeah. Or if, like, my schedule conflicts with someone else's schedule.
Right, so in both of those examples, we are putting the stress on the second syllable.
Right, exactly. And in some cases, if you're having a conflict, you may need to make a pivot in a new direction.
Ooh, yeah, the pivot. This is great. I think the first time I ever learned this word was from gym class.
Oh, like basketball?
Because we were playing basketball.
Right, yeah. In basketball, you're allowed to turn holding the ball, but you can only turn on one foot.
Right. If that other foot leaves the ground, it's against the rules. And that's what a pivot is, or again, this could be a verb too. That's what pivoting is.
Yeah, you're changing suddenly into a different direction.
A different direction, but with that foot still on the ground.
That's right.
So it's not going to be a complete or radical change. It's just, a change of direction.
Right, so often like a president might pivot in a new direction.
Right, exactly. He wants to appeal to a different group of people, so he will say one thing to one group and then pivot when there's a larger group.
Now, there's another word related to pivot, and that's the adjective pivotal. And it has this kind of meaning of that something has a central role, it's very critical to it.
Well, you'll often hear this word pivotal with things like pivotal moment or pivotal change. So it's usually talking about that very important point in history or in the story when something changes completely, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. So Josh is talking about a major product pivot, and when this happened, there was a lot of disagreement. So what he did to resolve that was he led the charge to assess different scenarios.
Okay, so, a big company is probably not going to do a big pivot like that with everybody agreeing, right? There's going to have to be a lot of conflict there. And one of the ways to sort of handle that conflict is to just, let's run some tests.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there's some question about the difference between assess and evaluate.
Yes.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Because sometimes they can be the same. Like, say I am a teacher and my boss might come in to assess me or evaluate me.
Right. Assess your performance, evaluate your performance.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say this word, if we could put a number on it, these two words 60% of the time are the same.
Yeah.
65 maybe. Now, the biggest difference that comes to my mind is assess. Again, you generally tend to assess things for their value or their worth. So again, we see assets earlier.
Yeah.
So like you could assess the value of your assets.
Yeah.
How much is your house worth? Who knows, right? You don't know until you sell it or get it assessed.
Yeah, an assessment.
That's an assessment, exactly. How much is your ring worth, or how much is your antique collection worth?
Right. So Josh, he's leading the charge. It sounds like he's kind of a war general, like leading the team into battle.
Yes, exactly. And of course, a war general needs to be very, very disciplined.
Well, he's showing discipline, meaning he's working really hard.
I mean, the whole point about being disciplined is having focus, staying on track, not letting things sort of distract you.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, probably there's a lot of truth to what Connor said. When we are disciplined, we might not want to be. Like, I want to eat all the ice cream, French fries, and never exercise.
Yeah.
But that's not a very disciplined way to sort of be healthy.
Right. You got to wake up at 6 a.m., go to the gym, work out. Nobody wants to do. Well, some people do.
Some people, they really want to do that. And those people probably don't need discipline.
Right,
they just like it.
Naturally disciplined, yeah. And you know what? Having a disciplined approach, method does pay off, because then you can come to a solution where everyone is on board.
Okay, on board the ship.
Yeah.
The ship of ideas.
Yeah, if you're on board, you're all going in the same direction.
Right, and if you are not on board with an idea or a team, you are obviously going in a different direction.
Yeah, you disagree.
So
it just means everyone agrees.
Right. Interestingly enough, we do use on board a lot with organizations, companies, HR, just because after Josh gets hired, if he gets hired, Catherine would probably say, like, welcome on board.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the train.
Welcome. Yeah, so it could be the train, the ship, whatever, the bus.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that it could mean on board at an organization or on board with an idea, with a team, with a plan.
All right. Well, I think Josh handled that quite well. That brings us to the end of this part of the interview.
Yeah, we've talked about how to frame your own experiences and frame your own strengths and weaknesses in such a way that interviewers like Catherine are really going to be interested in you.
Yeah, and one thing you don't want to do is exaggerate too much. You got to be honest as well, right?
It's tough. It is such a fine line, because you want to be honest. Oh, my strength is that I'm awesome. I am so good at everything.
Right, yes.
And my weakness is that I have no weaknesses.
Yeah.
So again, it all comes down to how you frame it.
Exactly. Well, we want to hear from you guys. Have you ever been in this situation? How did you handle it? What did you say? Or were you an interviewer? We'd love to hear about that. So leave us a comment, and until then, we'll talk to you later.
All right, bye guys.